Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another broadcast of the Lawrence Report. On tonight's broadcast, we will be discussing episode 6 of Black Cake. Now, we have more family drama, more twists and turns than I can imagine. It feels like every episode things just get more crazier and crazier, and sometimes it's just simply hard to believe, right? Um, so we're still dealing with the aftermath of Byron and Benny when it came to the situation of Byron basically getting arrested, right? Because in the previous episode, we did see that he did get arrested because he basically beat up Benny's boyfriend. And Byron, fortunately, is in some deep, deep trouble. Um, More trouble than what we all could imagine, to be honest with you. So, in the early beginning stages of this episode right here, we see Kofi. She's talking to Mitch, the family attorney, and she has a scarf on her head. She's dealing with the tumor, and one of the things that she says is, I apologize for this right here. Like I hate that this happened, and she's trying to record these tapes, but it's difficult doing this because she never thought that she would be in this predicament. And of course, Mitch is trying to, be a leaning shoulder to her, and he reminisces about some of the good times that him and Gibbs, aka Bert, had back in the day. And at one point in time, I thought just maybe is Mitch about to kiss Kobe because he kept kissing. He kissed her forehead, and then he kissed her hands. I'm like, are they about to? Nah, it can't be. Like Kobe wouldn't do that, right? But thankfully they didn't do that. And for Kobe, she is reminiscing about her good friend Bunny. And we saw earlier in previous episodes that Bunny is actually gay. She even came out and said that I'm actually attracted to you, Kofi. Like I wouldn't mind us dating. I wouldn't mind you being my girlfriend. But Kofi like, hold up. I like men only. I don't swing that way, bestie. That's not me. And she's thinking about Kobe. Like man, I left Kobe when I had to escape and run away. Like I wonder how she is. Like how is she feeling for herself? And we see Kofi, Gibbs, Bunny, and another young boy. They're at this dance party, and you know, Kobe is trying to tell Bunny, just act normal, act normal. But she didn't realize that Gibbs and his boy was invited to this dance party. So of course Bunny is automatically turned off because again, she's in the closet, but she can't tell anybody about it. The only person that really knows is Kofi. So they're dancing and things of that nature, and you know, Kobe, I must say Bunny just decides to go with it. She even decides to lay down that night with this young boy, because she don't want to be outed as, being gay, and, you know, that kind of thing back then was extremely forbidden. And shortly after that, we see Benny at a police station. Shout out to Mario Van Peebles, one of my favorite actors, actually. He is, playing a detective, you know, in this episode, and he's asking about the history of Benny's boyfriend. And she did go on to say that he beat her for several years. So basically, she was in a domestic violence dispute. And, he's asking her about, pressing charges and things of that nature. And of course, she decided, like, do I want to do this right here? But at the same time, I gotta look out for my brother. She ends up going through with everything as far as the legal process. So while she's going through the legal process, unfortunately, her brother Byron is basically booked. But while he's being booked, while he's being booked, he has a flashback of him when it looks like he's sitting in his parents' room or the living room, and he has a bunch of questions. I mean, he wanted to know, like, why do people always make fun of me for being so articulate? Why am I one of the only black kids in my classroom? Why do I always have to follow the speed limit? And I can't go over 1 mile or 2 miles because I could potentially get arrested. All those things that many of us in America, Black America especially, we ask ourselves every day, like, why do we have to do things a certain way versus other people, right? And he's frustrated with this right here. And it's so emotional for him. He breaks down crying. Basically, he just wants to be like all Black people. We just all want a fair chance and just want to live a normal life in America. So for Byron, Benny, and the family lawyer, Mitch, they basically, was able to get the charges dropped, and now he could go on about his way. At the same time, he mentions to his sister that, hey, I do have this panel discussion tomorrow, but I got this, big old black eye on my face, and she decides, well, what I'm gonna do? I can help clean up with some makeup, and she does that. And one of the crazy parts and one of the saddest parts is, she says, well, I'm paraphrasing here. She's kind of like, well, yeah, well, I'm used to covering up my black eyes, right? And he says to her, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm sorry that you had to deal with an abusive type relationship and that you had to go through with things such as a black eye. So not only is Byron out of jail, it looks like Steve is out of jail. And Steve is like a cockroach that you just cannot get rid of, right? So what does he do? He arrives to Benny's house, and he is frantic, screaming. He's talking about this painting that costs $25,000. He's like, you're not gonna be nothing without me. Like, what are you doing now? Like, I made you, basically. She tells him, like, that ain't true. As far as $25,000, that's up to you to fix. What did Keke Palmer say, y'all? I'm sorry to that man. And that's what Benny basically told her boyfriend in the situation right here. And now we get to my favorite part of this episode. Shout out to Byron. Proud of you, brother. So Byron, he is on this panel. He's a Black marine scientist. He's the only one on this panel that's Black. Everybody else is all white, right? And his boss has some very good things about, Byron, diversity, things of that nature, right? Cool. We get it. Cool. We appreciate you, right? But there's a young Black woman in the audience who asked Byron, what's it like being a trailblazer? He's like, it's amazing. It's great. I'm glad I could be the first. But there's more to this life besides traveling, because his job, he gets a chance to travel a lot. But he's like, there's more to life as far as traveling. And sometimes, being the first, I get lonely at the top. I look around, I look to my left, it's just me, right? So he goes on and on talking about, how he wants things to change, right? How we have to open up more doors for people of color, right? And Byron absolutely nails this panel. He leaves the audience in a good way with shock and awe. And I was so proud of him. I know that his lady Lynette, when she sees this right here, I know that she is going to be proud of him as well. So shout out to Byron. You stepped up to the plate, brother. We was rooting for you. So while Byron is, done with this panel, he is heading home. But he sees a car parked at home, right? And he sees his car kind of like roll up on the sidewalk. And at first he thinks that it may be Benny's boyfriend. He's like, I thought you cut ties with that dude, right? But we have a pleasant surprise. If it isn't Miss Mabel herself, guess who's coming to dinner? And, she is escorted into the kitchen. And, of course, Benny is completely shocked. Benny looks like she has seen a ghost. And it seems like Byron is more receptive to his new sister versus Benny, who kind of sees the sister, I think, as a comparison with their mother. Like, I feel like Benny was being compared, and I think they even said this in the show in this episode, that Benny was being compared somehow to her other unknown sister. So that, for many years kind of weighed on Benny because she thought that, I'm always being compared to Byron, but it looks like she might have been compared to her sister. So while they're at this family dinner, all three of the kids, Byron, Benny, Mabel, right? Mabel does this hand gesture with her hair. She does this right here. And Byron and Benny both look at each other like, yeah, mom used to do that. Like, you remind me so much of mom. That was one of her things always. So that was a little bit of shock and awe for everybody at the dinner table. And one of the saddest parts of this episode was, Mabel is asking about her father. Like, okay, so I know who my mother is, but who is my father now? And Byron tells the sad story that your father was basically the man in Scotland that raped our mother. And yeah, all hearts completely drop. Mabel heart drop, my heart drop, literally looking at her facial expressions, because that's just something that nobody wants to have to witness or bear to, right? And she says, well, maybe maybe this was a bad mistake. Maybe me coming here was just, I shouldn't have came here. So from there she walks off. Of course she's upset. She's storming out, and she goes back to her hotel room. And Byron and Benny, they get into this argument of trying to go ahead and say, hey, let's just listen to this final tape, right? Let's call it a day. And Byron, he wants to play the tape, but Benny wants to do it where all three of them are together to hear the tape. So Byron says, well, good luck. Hope you don't get your heart being broken by going to chase after Mabel. So she goes to the hotel, and she talks to Mabel. Mabel lets her inside. Mabel is caught drinking, and at first I was like, dang, is she about to commit suicide? Or just like drawing herself off the drinks or whatever. But she lets her into the hotel, and they're talking about the family history. And she even tells Mabel tells Benny that y'all got a little nephew named Geo. And that was pretty cool, because for Benny, she was completely shocked to find out that, yeah, I have a little nephew all the way on the other side of the world, basically. So now Benny, she finally convinces Mabel to come back to the house, and they listen to the final recording, right? And this recording, Covey is saying, it wasn't my plan to let you go. I want to raise you, basically. But what happened was, you was taken away from me. And of course, like every other episode, we end on a cliffhanger. You're like, dang. I wonder what happens next. So again, we end on this cliffhanger, and I'm assuming on the next episode we're gonna go back to Scotland and see what was the whole adoption thing like, as far as Kofi and this man who did those bad things to her. So man, I guess we just have to wait for next week's episode. If you're watching Black Cake, please comment below. I'd love to know, what did you think about this week's episode right here? And as always, thank you for tuning into the Lawrence Report.